The new Shining Revelry pack is just released in Pokemon Pocket. Alongside that, the new PvP update. We're going to be using PokemonMeta.com to check out the win rate specifically on each and every deck. Also, the tier list page. Also, checking out the top decks page for first place tournament top and decks. And we can go on over to the top cards page to specifically see what are the best cards of the new set. Well, the new set being Shining Revelry. Outside of specific deck types, let's see what are the general good cards like Red. Red states that during this turn, attacks used by your Pokemon deal plus 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. This is the #1 most used new card from the new set within tournament-topping decks. This is a direct power creep on a card like Giovanni. Giovanni, also being a supporter card, is only plus 10 extra damage. So what is up with that? Wow, Red is now here. If we open up the Red card, we could see what decks are using it. Well, there's a lot of different decks used. We have Giratina. We'll be looking more specifically on the exact deck breakdowns that is. We also have the second most used card, Iono. Each player shuffles cards from their hand into their deck, then draws that many cards. Now, for the Pokemon TCG, where we have cards that could much more specifically search for the Pokemon and cards we want from our deck, we are still in the infancy stage of Pokemon Pocket, where a card like Iono is actually good to help make your deck more consistent. If you're digging late game for a much-needed Charizard because you got unlucky, you may be shuffling a ton of cards from your hand to help draw into that much-needed Charizard, or if you need to set up for a Leaf play. Maybe your deck plays just one Leaf and you really need to draw into it. Unfortunately, Leaf is a supporter card, so it's not going to be usable in the same turn you use your Iono, but if you could draw into your Leaf and then on the very next turn use your Leaf for, let's say, a slow deck like Darkrai, this would be the game-winning play. We also have Team Rocket Grunt, the third most used new card. Flip a coin until you get tails. Each heads, discard a random energy from the opponent's active Pokemon. This is the opposite of Misty. Misty, where you're gaining a water energy per heads, and then you can just strip it all off if you get lucky. And then we have the fourth most used card being the Pokemon Center Lady. Heal for 30 damage from one of your Pokemon, and it also recovers from all special conditions. You may be thinking similarly to Red and Giovanni that this is a power creep onto Potion, but that's not true. Potion is an item. So even though it is weaker than the Pokemon Center Lady, the Potion is usable more than once per turn and can be used alongside the Pokemon Center Lady. It's like peanut butter and jelly. Not one is better than the other. Now, within those top 4 most used cards that aren't specific to a single deck type, we're now going to be going into the deck types themselves. We could do that by looking at the tier list. Now, the tier list is going to be most optimally up to date after a full week of the new pack release. So at the moment, it's showing that Arceus EX Dialga EX is the #1 best deck, but we have to wait for a week to see if that's actually true. We could also check out the win rate page to see how true that is for an even more up-to-date look into what's good. So at the moment, we could see what decks are climbing. Starting off at tier 4, we have Giratina EX Magnezone, barely there on the tier list at a power level of 4. And then we also have Giratina EX itself without Magnezone. Then if we go on over to tier 3, we'll see that the best version of Giratina is with Darkrai. Giratina EX Darkrai is here. And if we go on over to tier 2, nothing new is there yet. So if we want to, starting off at the Giratina EX Darkrai, we can click on this to now see specifically how exactly the deck is built. Here are some random decks that have been top in tournaments. So here is a recent top 4 deck. I'm going to zoom in nice for you so you could see this using Druddigon, Darkrai, and Giratina. We're going to talk about why this deck is also good. Another top 4 of a 75-player event, and then you could check out the rest of these. What I would say is really good about this is it has an almost even kind of positive win rate against Arceus EX Dialga, as you could see on the win rates here. And its worst matchup is against Gyarados. Gyarados is actually a surprisingly good deck within the new pack release. And we're going to see if it's even using new cards to help support that deck, or it's just a more favorable deck against the newer decks. What exactly is going on there? So how this deck works exactly, as this is the new best deck, but it does not mean it's the new best deck. It's just the best deck among the new cards. Why is this good? Well, this deck is all about ideally starting off with a Druddigon in your active Pokemon spot and then just sitting there and blocking all damage, or your opponent hopefully does not attack into it at all, as it's going to dissuade them from attacking because it deals 20 damage if they attack into it. If that's not enough to prevent them from attacking, you could even equip a Rocky Helmet onto it to ensure that you inflict 40 damage if they were to attack into the Druddigon. Now, while the Druddigon is sitting there installing from the bench, we already know about Darkrai. Darkrai is going to be dealing 20 damage to the opponent's active Pokemon every turn as you attach a Darkness Energy. So this deck, when you build this deck, you want to make sure you don't have Psychic Energy, you don't have Fire Energy, and you don't have Water Energy, just Darkness Energy to continually equip onto the Darkrai to inflict that 20 damage every single turn. Now, what the Giratina adds to this is that because we don't need to play Psychic Energy, the Giratina is going to be giving itself Psychic Energy every single turn. Now, the downside of this ability is it ends your turn. What else ends your turn in Pokemon Pocket? Using an attack. Well, we're not attacking with Druddigon, so ending the turn with Giratina is fine as long as we ensure that we trigger the effect of Darkrai first. So every turn, deal 20 damage, then equip a Psychic, then end your turn. And then when you're ready to switch in the Giratina for that 130 damage Chaotic Impact, which also deals 20 damage to itself, ideally you're going to be using this on an EX Pokemon, as hopefully the Darkrai EX will be enough to knock out another Pokemon that's maybe not an EX, and then you could win the whole game. And by chipping away their life points with Darkrai EX, you could use a card like Cyrus to, if once they retreat their Pokemon, because your deck's kind of slow, they're going to have time to retreat. Cyrus will pull that damaged Pokemon back to the front line, and then maybe that is when you whip out your Giratina to finish them off, or maybe inflict your final lethal amount of damage with the Darkrai EX. So from here, what I want to do is I want to go to the win rates page specifically, and I already have it set up to be on the day of the release, and then also today. So let's switch on over to that. Boom. So you can do this yourself by clicking on the calendar. So I have the set just came out in March 27th, and then we have today's time right now. So as you can see right here, this is sorted by the total games played in tournaments. This is including people not topping tournaments, but we also have the win rates, and we could expand that to check it out. So Arceus EX Dialga is still the #1 most played deck, but from what I'm seeing here, it's not the best performer. We have the second most played deck, Giratina EX Darkrai, being the second most played at a 56% win rate at about 800 total battles since the new pack came out. And then at about 700 battles, you have Gyarados at a 2% higher win rate. So the question is going to have to be on to you. Do you think that a 100 battle difference makes up for the 2% increase on Gyarados? Or do you think 56% win rate with 100 more battles than Gyarados is actually better than 58% win rate? Now, if you sort specifically by just win rate, that's you're going to see some crazy inaccurate data as, you know, Beedrill, only 6 battles, 83% win rate. Obviously, you do not want to take that into account when looking at what the best decks are. You could also sort by the losers of the pack since the new release, Golduck with a 0% win rate and what they were losing to. That's pretty funny to see. But most accurately, it's going to be the total battles while also looking at the win rate. So with Arceus being the #1 deck to focus on, what is it losing to specifically? Now, the best matchup and worst matchup could also fall victim to a low amount of duels being played. That's why we have this set up to only showcase if at least 100 battles have happened, or if there aren't 100 battles, it's going to show the total 10% of battles. Because if we open up Arceus specifically and we go show more and even show more, it's the most popular deck. As you can see, it goes, oh, wow, it's losing to Hypno like crazy, but that's only 8 battles. So this is not valid information. The actual worst matchup with enough data is against Gallade EX. That's a much better indicator to be looking at. So even though Gallade right here at a total 54% win rate, it does not look as good as the 56% of Giratina. But Gallade having the best matchup against Arceus Dialga, that would make me want to play this deck specifically. So let's take a look at Gallade EX as it's a top performer since the new pack release. So Gallade EX, as you can see here, it actually, its best matchup is against Gyarados. It's not even having its best matchup against Arceus. So Gyarados is a top performer and top played deck. Arceus is a top performer and top played deck. The missing piece here is how well is it doing against the Giratina Darkrai, though? As you could see, within the top 3 decks, it beats Gyarados and Arceus, but does it lose to Giratina? I do want to be looking into that. So let's click Show More, Show More, Show More. Where is it actually? Control F. Giratina Darkrai. It has about a 50% win rate. So I don't know. Looking at this, it looks like Gallade may be the best deck possibly. Pretty much a half win rate, a 50% against the second most played deck, a 68% win rate against the third most played deck, and then a 61% win rate against the #1 most played deck. What is exactly happening here? Let's see what's going on and look at some recent deck lists even. Are they playing the new red card? It looks like this deck list is not playing it. Nothing new in this top 4 deck. Nothing new besides the Pokeball Alta Art here. We have 1 red in there, so red is not even prevalently being played in Gallade to be clapping up the new top decks. So what is so good about this deck? Why should you consider playing this deck? We have Gallade, which is the evolution from the psychic monster Kirlia. We have a double fighting energy. This deals 20 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Otherwise, it does a base 70 damage, and Gallade at a whopping 170 health. That is quite a lot. Possibly some people are using Iona here at 10%. 87% are not using it within the most recent decks, that is. This could help make the deck a bit more consistent, possibly. But as we saw some from the more recent decks, it's not even being used. And then we also have Hitmonlee, stretch kicking for 30 damage. I would say you have the Hitmonlee probably as one of your main starter Pokemons as you're building up Gallade onto your bench, as you do have to, unfortunately, stage to evolve this to get it ready. Marshadow could then avenge your Hitmonlee after it's done stretch kicking the back row to death. And then once your Gallade is ready, whip it out. And ideally, they're going to have a big fat Pokemon in the active spot to deal a ton of damage to, an additional 20 on top of 70 per energy attached to that active Pokemon. What are, from the most popular Pokemon here, I'm going to be typing in this little trick here. I'm going to type in Diamond 4. That's going to give me all the EX Pokemon and the most popular ones. This is weak to fighting. So there you go. That's the main thing I want to see here. Arceus EX, weak to fighting. So already it's going to increase the base damage of this to 90. And then with the Arceus needing 3 energy to even activate its ability, it's going to give this an additional, so it's going to go from 70 to 90 to 110 to 130 to 150. 150 damage with the Gallade if it has 3 energy because of the weakness, and its health is at 140. So there you go. The picture is right there in front of you, a 61% win rate against this deck because the Gallade is one-shotting the Arceus. Dialga is weak to fire, it being metal. What else is weak to fire here? In any, I should say, fighting that's a prevalently used Pokemon. That's pretty much the main Pokemon that just needs to be weak to fighting for the Gallade deck to be good enough. And so this is a deck that you definitely want to be considering, and I would be rating this to be one of the top picks of the new pack, even though it's not specifically using new pack cards. Another deck I wanted to look at is Gyarados. Why does this within the top 5, even the top 10 decks currently having the highest win rate? If we were to open this up, it's got a horrible win rate against Gallade. So if Gallade were to ever really take off further than it is right now, which I mean, this is a close amount of battles. This is pretty much only 60 more battles than Gallade. And if people are looking at these win rate stats, seeing that Gallade has a good matchup against Arceus and Gyarados, Gyarados seems like this would not be the deck that I'd want to be playing in an event or even on the ladder if Gallade's randomly going to be clapping me up. What is up with this? It's, you know, about 60 to 70 battles, and we have a 32% abysmal win rate against Gallade. That is insane. But what's good about Gyarados is it's beating the #1 best deck, Arceus, and it's doing it a little bit more often than Gallade. Gallade's got the 66 Pro. Actually, wait, Gallade is better than Gyarados. Correction there. So I don't know. Gallade just seems better, even though it's overall having a slightly less win rate. It's really when you go into the details where things I think makes more sense. So let's open up the Gyarados deck type breakdown here. Why is this deck doing so well? Well, it's not doing well, not only against Gallade, it's also getting clapped by Lucario, Gallade right behind it, but the Lucario matchup is a more prevalent matchup that it is losing. That is really concerning. The higher up here being the most battles played against a specific deck, the more red you see up here, the worse the deck is off. Executor is also seemingly kind of a popular deck. That's within the last 2 weeks. We do last 7 days, or a custom date is even better to be looking at here. So what is good here? I notice a lot of people now teching in Palkia, the non-EX version. One of the greater benefits of Palkia is that it does not give the opponent 2 points for defeating this. This is incredibly annoying to deal with. That 120 health basic Pokemon with the 50% chance to deal 120 damage. It could be very difficult to favorably trade with the Palkia, where if it can at least go even with an EX, that's not going even. They're now winning because they're up an additional point. I have definitely lost a game to Palkia, whether I want to admit it or not. And then the Gyarados itself, what is so good about Gyarados? What's not good is if the Magikarp gets stretch kicked by a Hitmonlee on the bench, that's something that's definitely concerning. Gyarados, the Rampaging Whirlpool, 140 damage. Discard a random energy among the energy attached to all Pokemon, both yours and your opponent, with that whopping 180 health, making this a super bulky Pokemon. And that 140 damage, well, if we look at Arceus, it being the #1 most played Pokemon, at 140 health, it's a one-shot for Gyarados. So it really is sometimes that simple, where Gallade can, for the most part, one-shot the Arceus. The Gyarados is one-shotting the Arceus, and the Arceus being the #1 most played deck, that is just how the other decks become better by default. Now, all this talk of beating Arceus and it being the most played deck, why is it the most played deck? Let's look into that. If we click on the deck type breakdown here, here's how the deck is being played. Arceus and Dialga both being played at 2 at 100%. And then you could see the breakdowns here. Some are playing Mew, some are not playing Mew. And if you want to see with and without Mew, you can type in Mew to see with or without. That is a good way to do it. You could see this was right before the new set came out, getting first place of a 126 player event. Now, going onto the win rate page where I already have the dates set up, and we bring up the Dialga, which has a less than 50% win rate despite it being the most played deck, which could lend towards its lower win rate. When you are the most played deck, what happens? You have the best players playing your deck. You also have the worst players playing your deck. So that's another thing you have to take into factor with win rates is if everyone's gravitating towards playing this deck, maybe the not so good players are bringing down the total win rate. And what I said here is the decks towards the top, seeing a lot of red here, losing to Gyarados, Gallade, and Marshadow, that is definitely a problem. So we already looked at Gyarados, we already looked at Gallade, and we already, while it's not in the red, a 47% win rate against Giratina, we also looked at that deck. Another deck we should be looking at, as since the new pack release it's not having a good win rate against, is Marshadow Rampardos. So from here, I could tell you decks I would definitely not want to be playing. If this is the #1 played deck and it sticks to that, I don't want to be playing Articuno with an unfavorable matchup. I don't want to be playing Weevil. Definitely do not want to be playing Charizard EX with a 64% win rate. Now, you could argue this is only about 30 battles, but this probably will be panning out to be around the same win rate nonetheless. Now, let's look at Marshadow's. Marshadow being a top pick within the pack release. Marshadow is here. I am very much enjoying a deck like this, but I'm playing Lucario instead. So if I were to bring up the Lucario deck type and compare it, so we'll click on this, we'll go to the Lucario breakdown. So we have the Marshadow breakdown versus the Lucario breakdown. This could be a good comparison on which deck you'd be preferring to play. Marshadow can quickly be knocking out Pokemon with Rampardos. This is not an EX Pokemon, they only get 1 point for beating this. It deals 130 whopping damage. That's 150 to an Arceus. So that's why this already could be good. If the Arceus is in the main spot, just one shot, knock it out, and then just whittle them down with the Hitmonlee. I would say this deck is less aggressive than Lucario because instead of having Hitmonlee poke in the back row, you have Lucario boosting up all of your damage. Now, the Lucario does stack. If you have 2 Lucarios on the field or bench, all of your fighting Pokemon's going to be dealing 40 additional damage. So instead of the Hitmonlee, you're mostly going to have the Sudowoodo, which is going to be dealing to an EX Pokemon not just 50 damage, but 90 damage if you have double Lucarios. And if they're weak to fighting, you're going to be dealing 110 damage with this basic 80 health, 1 energy Sudowoodo, which, you could then revenge it with the Marshadow, or when you're done building up your Rampardos, you then whip this out to finish them off. This is one of the quickest decks to bring out on the PvP ladder that I would be greatly recommending. It currently on the tier list is at tier 2. So this is, I would say, at the early ranks of PvP, this is my #1 choice for very quick battles of clapping them up. And we see that it's got that 60% win rate against Arceus EX Dialga. It's got a positive win rate against Gyarados. Gyarados, as we already saw, why that deck is popular, being able to one-shot the Arceus, and then Lucario also being able to beat this. Now, let's see, Marshadow. It looks like the win rates are quite similar, not as good as Lucario when it comes to facing off against Arceus. I would say that my personal preference, I do think the Lucario deck is better, but the data does show them quite similar. Now, the tier list does have Lucario at higher, but that is including before the new pack release. So if we go back on over to the win rates here, we could see Marshadow is being played more than Lucario, actually. Lucario has definitely dropped in relevance since the new pack release. So it seems like the Marshadow, more control-like style is better. And I would say the main reason for that is because of Hitmonlee being able to punch, or stretch kick, I should say, the Magikarp on the bench. That's the one thing that the Lucario deck is lacking, the control aspect of hitting that back row Magikarp. So with Gyarados rising in prevalence, Marshadow with Hitmonlee is seemingly the better choice over a deck like Lucario, if you like the fighting deck style. Now, what else can we gain from these win rates here? We could see a newer deck, Meowscarada. I'm not too familiar with this. What is going on here? It's got an abysmal win rate against Charizard. Now, that is a fire deck, so that is to be expected. That's not too crazy to see. It's got a bad win rate against Gyarados, kind of even against Arceus, being its most prevalent and relevant best win rate. Now, the Giratina, there's only 26 battles here. That's why it's not listed as a best matchup, but it's still worth mentioning. Despite this not being many battles, a 58% win rate against Giratina and Darkrai being the second most played deck since the new pack, that's nothing to scoff at. So while your friends are playing Giratina, if you then duel against your friend with Meowscarada, you should be winning. Let's see why that's the case here. Meowscarada deck breakdown. The Meowscarada card itself is not an EX Pokemon. At 140 health, it's got Fighting Claws for 60 damage. What does this do? If your opponent's active Pokemon is EX, this deals 70 more damage, 130 damage for 2 grass energy. 130, that is wild. What is weak to grass that's at the top here? So we have weak to fighting, fire, dark, lightning, Darkrai, weak to grass. And that turns the Meowscarada into a one-shot onto the Darkrai. Now, Darkrai is most prevalently going to be on the bench, but sometimes it is summoned to the active spot if you are able to knock out their Druddigon, and they're ideally not having a Giratina in the back row ready to replace it. Giratina, unfortunately for Meowscarada, is not going to be a one-shot, but with Red, it is. Red dealing 150 damage with the Fighting Claws onto the Giratina, and that's it. You win the game. That is definitely a big deal if you are able to knock out their Druddigon and then they switch in the Giratina, use Red to kill it, or without Red, the Meowscarada is just going to take out the Darkrai for that 140 health, dealing 150 damage with our Fighting Claws. Very nice. What else we have here? We have, what is this? Call for help. Put a random grass energy from your deck into your hand. Grass Pokemon. Okay, so this makes the Meowscarada more consistent than, let's say, a Charizard, where Charmander doesn't have this ability to pull a Charizard from your deck to your hand. It's also about 50% of them are playing Executor, and the other half are not playing it. So it's mostly Meowscarada. Very cool. Let's see some. There's only 2 of the recent decks we'll be looking at here. Now, why do we have so many analytics, only 2 deck lists? That means that out of all these battles, which is almost 300 of them, it's simply not topping tournaments. We only have tournament topping deck lists here. So even though it has some decent matchup win rate against a deck like Giratina EX, it's not able to close out an event with a top. It's falling off right before then, I imagine, but it's still good to see, despite it not topping tournaments, what its total win rate is, and to see that it's a pretty good deck despite it not topping that many events. So this is where you see the 50% playing it and not playing it among the tournament top and deck lists here. So if you wanted to copy this, this is, a sleeper deck. This is definitely something the opponent is not going to be expecting, but with the win rate data, you know what it does well against and what it does not do well against. What else do we have from the win rate data that could be looking good? Despite it not topping tournaments, it being a top 6 deck being played within events since the new pack release. Now, obviously, ideally, we're going to want to be checking back with the win rates when at least 1 week passes by. Even better, 2 weeks would be even more consistent, as we are seeing quite a bit of variance where a deck like the Meowscarada is a top 6 deck played despite it having only 2 tournament tops, but it's still fun to be looking at the early data. Now, one of my favorite things of looking at the early data here is looking at what is topping tournaments among the new cards. So first, on the top decks page, I would encourage you to just scroll to the bottom even on the top decks page to have fun with Pokemon Pocket. It's not a super crazy competitive game. You could do well with anything at the bottom here. Now, with that out of the way, let's check out the new cards. Ooh, was that Wugga Trio? We have Giratina being the best performing deck using new cards. These are the Gyarados decks that are just using new cards, so it's not the total picture of all the Gyarados decks. You could see it's using 1 red, so it's now being listed. So one of my favorite things to check out here is this. First place tournament winning decks. Giratina, despite everything we said, the win rates and specific matchups and good players and bad players playing the decks, Giratina is the most prevalent tournament winning deck. So does that lend more credibility to the deck than the win rates and its total tournament tops? You'd have to tell me yourself. If you believe that's a better measure of a top deck, then that would mean that Giratina is the #1 best deck. Gallade also doing well. Gyarados doing well, winning events here. So let's check out some of these tournament winning decks. Let's start off with the Giratina one, yes? So here it is, nothing too crazy. We got Giant Cape to boost up your Dredagon, or if you have to fall back on the Darkrai or Giratina, that additional plus 20 health, which could help mitigate the opponent playing red out of nowhere, as we're playing red with this. So that aggression's very good. What's surprising from a first place deck list is, despite Team Rocket Grunt being the 4th most played card of the new pack, I don't really think this card's that good, but he's playing it and he won a tournament, so what do I know? Team Rocket Grunt in a tournament-winning deck, almost a 100-player event. Good on you, my friend. That's great. I'm always open-minded. I'm never going to want to dissuade someone from playing something that's possibly spicy here. Now, is that the same theme among these #1 decks of Giratina actually winning the events? Are they all playing Team Rocket Grunt? Probably not. Let's see this one. Huh? Wait a sec. Another David in a 122-player event getting first place, also playing Team Rocket Grunt at 1. Wow. Also playing double red. And then, okay, then this is where 88-player event got first place, not playing Team Rocket Grunt, only playing 1 red, but the rest of the deck is quite similar. It's also funny to note that they are ensuring that they are playing the alt art version of Pokeball. I don't know if there's a conspiracy on having that drawn more often if you have the more expensive version. And then we have Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan with no other new cards besides the Giratina. No red, no Team Rocket Grunt. We got double Rocky Helmet. Were they all on Rocky Helmet? We have 1 Rocky Helmet here, 1 Rocky Helmet, 2 Rocky Helmet, and 2 Rocky Helmet. So a little bit of diversity among the 4 different tournament-winning Giratina decks. But again, this is all very early data. It's only been 2 days of events. And then we have the Gyarados winners. Is there anything crazy about the winners? They're all playing the regular Palkia, the non-EX version of Palkia. Nice to see. Gallade EX. We got one Marshadow, Hitmonlee also up in here. Make sure you're kicking the Magikarps off the field, 1 red, and then we have 1 red. They're pretty close. They're pretty much the exact same. Wait, we have double Iono. Double Iono in a tournament-winning deck. Well, it's a deck that plays a stage 2 Pokemon. So if we want the Gallade more consistently, then Iono's the way. Or if your Hitmonlee's about to die, then Iono could dig for your Marshadow in addition to your Pokeball. Even the Pokemon communication can help grab a Pokemon from your deck. We got double Cyrus and double Iono. This is a deck I'd be immensely fearful of. The Hitmonlee essentially is going to tag any Pokemon on the field that Cyrus can now bring to the forefront for a Gallade to kill. So your Darkrai is not safe. Yeah, just smack Darkrai once, pull it to the front with Cyrus, and then Gallade could one-shot it. You know, depending on how quickly you can get a Gallade up and ready and on the field in your active spot to get smacking. What does it do? Energy Blade and not smack and get slicing. And then what other first place decks lists here? These are, since the new pack release, Palkia. Anything new here? Team Rocket Grunt in the Palkia deck. We have a red and playing just 1 Misty. That's interesting. We got 1 Iona also in the other Palkia deck. We have the only tournament-winning Arceus EX Dialga deck since the new pack release, and it's this one. And it's using just a single new card, but it's using a card that not many people play, the Shaman. If we were to bring up the deck type breakdown here, Shaman, wait, it's only 9% not used. I guess I'm kind of outdated mentally on what people are playing. Shaman is quite popular, actually, to my surprise. It's going to, during your turn, you may heal for 10 damage from each of your Pokemon. So a nice AoE 10 damage heal onto everyone here. We are playing Mew in this deck list. Mars is up in here. Mars is an interesting card. Your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck, then draws a card for each of their remaining points needed to win. Holy moly. You know, a late game Mars is going to delete a good portion of their deck. That is something. If you think they're holding on to a Cyrus, then I think Mars, in a way, is an anti-Cyrus, right? Do you agree with that? Is that how you see this card? Because that's how I view it. What else do we have on the tournament-winning decks here? We have Lucario winning a tournament with the new pack release. Anything crazy here? No, just the Iono. Iono added here to make the Rampardos a bit more consistent. We have Pikachu winning the new Pikachu. Holy moly, let's bring this up. So despite it not being at the top of win rates or being the most played deck, we still got Pikachu up in here. And with the new Pikachu, what's good about it? Discard all energy from this Pokemon to deal that 150 damage. So this is going to be able to one-shot the Arceus. That's very nice to see. And unfortunately, I don't think Gyarados gets one-shot, right? Isn't Gyarados too large? Gyarados is at 180 health, so this is going to be dealing 170 damage, but if backed up by one of our double reds, it will only then be able to one-shot that Gyarados. It's got 120 health here. Iona to help make the deck more consistent. We also have Magnezone, which is essentially a colorless Pokemon that does not require any of your energy zone energy. And then we have the brand new Pachirisu. What's so good about this? Now, obviously, Pikachu's not evolving off of it, so what's going on here? It's got 70 base health, basic Pokemon, 1 energy plasma for 10 damage. Take a lightning energy from your energy zone, attach it to one of your benched lightning Pokemon. So, wow, this will turn on your Pikachu much more quickly. And then Pikachu's going to get zapping almost right away as you're plasmaing it up. So I guess ideally you're able to activate Plasma at least twice. After 2 Plasmas, the Pachirisu will either die or retreat for the 1 energy that you already have for it activating Plasma. And then your Pikachu's going to be ready to get Thunderbolt in for the win. Very nice. Or X-Speed could help pull off a Pokemon more easily. Now, what else is there to really say about this in total? What is the ending theme here? So looking at the win rates, we could have this, and then I'll just grab this up again. So we have March 27th, and we want to make sure it is at 12 a.m. to today's dates. The ending thing here is it looks like Giratina is at the moment one of the best decks to be investing into. But then with that noted, you do want to know that Gyarados is also good. Gallade is also good. I think these are the top 3 decks to really be looking at. I think that Arceus will be dropping in prevalence. It's only the most played deck at the moment while having a bad performance because going into the new pack release, this was just simply the best deck going in. So it was the safe pick to play. But it's got a big target on its back with a bunch of unfavorable matchups here, losing to Gyarados, losing to Gallade, and then also losing to Marshadow. That is something you do not want to be seeing here for the deck you want to be playing. And then also one of the biggest winners of the pack, as we said earlier, is the red. Red's a big one. And the Iono, consistency increase plus increased damage. If you're sick of people tanking, then red's going to help break the tank meta up a little bit. Yes? So there you go. Let me know what you enjoy about the new pack update. Are you liking the new win rate feature on the website, how it's on every single deck type page, and you could sort by custom, all that craziness and what you want. There's a lot more features we are working on in the background for the website, including further improving the win rate feature. But with that said, I appreciate you all very much. Check out PokemonMeta.com for updates on the tier list, top decks page, and win rates and more. And I'll see you in the next video. We are out.